Everyone, and welcome back to another episode of another Star Wars podcast. I'm your host, Matt.
And I'm the co-host, Melissa.
How are you guys doing? How are you doing today, Melissa?
I'm good, a little tired. I don't know if our listeners can see my face, but I'm a little bit exhausted. It's been a crazy week. I never like getting back into the swing of things right after Christmas because it takes me like 3 weeks to find my schedule again. And I'm in that really weird phase of trying to adjust back to normal life after the holidays. So yeah, I'm just a little bit sluggish and tired. How about you?
Same. I think everyone's kind of feeling that way right now. I think getting back into the swing of things at the beginning of the year is always tough. But at least we have some Star Wars content to get us through it and start off the year strong. So today, guys, we are going to be reviewing two episodes. The first episode and second episode of Book of Boba Fett. We already kind of broke down the first episode, and there's really not a ton to talk about. I don't think. But the second episode is juicy. So why don't you kick us off, Liz? What did you think of the first two episodes?
I have my notes. I have the summaries, which are like not even summaries. And then I actually wrote down the writers and the directors just so our listeners can have a frame of reference for who did what. So for episode 1, the summary is Boba Fett holds court. The director of the first episode was Robert Rodriguez, who directed a few episodes of The Mandalorian. And the writer was, of course, Jon Favreau. And the second episode was directed by Steph Green, and the writer was once again Jon Favreau. I think you guys pretty much know my thoughts on the first episode of the show. I liked it. I thought it was a great setup. Genuinely so surprised how many people were so negative about it, which I completely disagree with. I thought it set up the show so well. And especially after seeing that second episode, I think it just made the first episode look so much better. I really liked the first episode. I don't think that there's a ton to break down there, but I do think it set the show in motion really nicely. The second episode, though, just completely blew me away, like right off the bat. Everything from like the special effects to the makeup and the prosthetics to the story and the development of Boba and like the Tuscan Raiders, just like all around, I was just completely blown away by like the world building and just how much care and effort was put into this particular episode to really ground you in what the series is going to be about. There are so many things I want to talk about, but those were just like my basic general impressions. I'm sure we'll break it down more as we get into it, but what did you think?
I totally agree with you. I think the first episode was, I don't know if it was like to be expected, but like I didn't think we were going to see a lot, and we didn't. It was just kind of set up the show, which is what it should be.
Mhm.
I was also surprised at some people's reactions saying that, it wasn't living up to the hype of like Mando and stuff like that. It's like, dude, let's wait until we've seen a couple more episodes before we automatically poo-poo on the show. But that's how some Star Wars fans are. They can just be a little judgmental right off the bat without really taking the full thing into account. I did think it set up the show nicely. I mean, obviously that first opening shot of the first episode was amazing, and it's something we've all been looking forward to for a long time. And you have to remember, this has got to kind of sit separately and on its own, away from The Mandalorian. So I try not to compare it to anything. It's just, it sits as its own thing. It sits as its own show. It's getting set up as its own show with its own characters. Of course, you're going to see familiar faces here and there, but it has to stand on its own to tell Boba's story and try not to get too attached to these other Star Wars stories that we've heard from. And I think it did a good job of that. So first episode, I definitely liked. Wasn't anything mind-blowing, but I wasn't expecting that, and I didn't want that. The second episode, totally agree with you, though. Stunning. Like, the cinematography, the music, the prosthetics, the effects, the characters that we saw, the story building, the world building, the background, the flashbacks, the cool trippy drug scene. So I thought the second episode was excellent, and it really helped. That's what I think sets the tone more for what we can expect the rest of the season. Whereas the first episode I thought was more of just like, all right, we got to just kind of build up some groundwork here of like how we're going to tell this story. So that's what I thought. But based on the second episode, I think we have a lot more awesome stuff that's on the way, especially episode 6, which is going to be directed by Dave Filoni. Who knows what's going to happen there, and we can talk about that in a bit. But yeah, overall, I'm very happy with the first 2 episodes off the bat.
There's just like, I can't believe, I'm so impressed with how much story they were able to accomplish within 2 episodes already. It's like now I feel like I understand so much about where this show is headed, and we only get 7 episodes. So just as like utilizing story, they did an exceptional job with being like, here's the setup. Now here's what the show is going to be about, and here you're perfectly immersed in the world and what's going on with this story. Just to jump right in, I am so excited that we got to see Huts.
Yes. Finally, we get to see some more after seeing him quite a bit in Clone Wars.
Yes, I
But like more than like just being able to see them again at all was awesome. But then, having them come into Book of Boba Fett, I think was amazing too.
I think everybody kind of expected that because the Hutts have such a strong presence on Tatooine. You kind of can't get through that territory without bringing up the impact of the Hutts. And I didn't write down their names. They have names, right? Like
Yes, yeah. They had names. I totally forgot what their names were.
Luke and Leia.
They mention them. They mention them. Right when they were like showing up, I think, but I didn't write them down either.
Yeah, I didn't write down their names, but I'm just gonna call them Luke and Leia for right now. Totally awesome to see them coming in. They're being like, "Hey, dude, this is our territory," and Boba's like, "Haha, sucks for you, but no." So I really liked that. I feel like there's gonna be some territorial issues coming up in this show, and maybe some turf wars like you said in your reaction video, which would be great because I feel like that could lay the groundwork for characters like maybe other bounty hunters like Bosk and Cad Bane maybe. So little excited about that. Speaking of bounty hunters, we do get a crazy cool Wookiee bounty hunter that comes in that scene that kind of builds the tension with Boba and the Hutts. And as I came to realize, as a lot of people commented on my reaction video, and I did my research on Wikipedia, that is a bounty hunter from the Star Wars comics, particularly, I think, Darth Vader #1 in 2015. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, called Black Chrysanthemum, a gladiator Wookiee bounty hunter. And I thought that was really cool. I don't really read the Star Wars comics. That's never really been my forte or something that I've been particularly interested in, but that was a very prominent character in the comics back in 2015. And apparently this is a character that also went toe to toe with Obi-Wan in the comics. So that's really cool that they brought that character from the comics into live action. What did you think about that?
I thought that was awesome. I didn't recognize who it was at first, but I knew he looked familiar. I knew I had seen him before somewhere. I just didn't know where, but that makes way more sense. Like I also had some people comment and say where Black Chrysanthemum came from, which is awesome. And I think I mentioned this in the reaction video, which if you guys haven't watched that, feel free to go back and check. But it gets a Wookiee, and we're used to seeing Wookiees as like Chewbacca or whatever, But you see this one, he's like a darker, more evil looking Wookiee with some armor on and a cool gun, and like. I just thought he looks very menacing, and the practical effects there I thought were awesome. And then bringing in this new character that ties in with the comics, also very cool, and just makes the story a little bit more interesting because there's background there. It's not just some random guy they made up. They're actually bringing in, as many characters as they can from all these different sources. So I loved it.
I also read, I did my research on Wikipedia because I don't want to be like left behind in the dust as everyone's freaking out. Like I want to understand the hype, but I also read that this is a character, Boba Fett has worked with in the past,
right.
And they both worked for Darth Vader. And so I'm just like, oh, are we going to see some like tension there? And, I'm interested to see like how they're going to approach that character because I feel like he's going to come back into play in a really big way. And, maybe there's some unsettled, aggression towards Boba Fett that they're going to have to hash it out eventually. So it's really cool, like the potential that they set up with that character. And like you said, like the prosthetics for that and the makeup and just like the intimidating feel they gave to that character. I said it was like the Jon Snow of Wookiees in my reaction video. That was the vibe I got. I was like, wow, this is so cool. So I'm excited to see what they do with that. And those little tie-ins, just it's fan service, but it also adds to the story. So I'm really appreciative about that.
Totally agree.
Speaking of prosthetics, just the aliens in general in this episode.
Yeah, you go to the little cantina there.
Wow.
In Mos Espa. Just very well done. And I love this stuff too because I've been burned before. We've all been burned before with other movies. I don't want to mention any names, but the Hobbit trilogy. they relied too much on CGI, and even the newer trilogy of Star Wars, I think they relied too much on CGI. Like they did do some decent practical effects, I thought, but there's that. It's not the same feeling. You know what I mean?
No.
And with a movie like the original Lord of the Rings trilogy, that's part of what it was like these practical effects with the orcs that Uruk-hai. So it makes The Hobbit seem less good. Same thing with Star Wars. The Star Wars first three movies had to do practical effects. They didn't have CGI to rely on, so it gives the movie this very interesting feel, and it's kind of cheesy, kind of corny, but it feels authentic and it feels well done, and that's just become part of what Star Wars is. So to be able to see them put all this effort and work into doing this to make it really feel like you're part of that world was awesome. Like have all these crazy looking aliens requires a lot of thought and creativity and effort. So huge fan of that for sure.
We do need to talk about, speaking of aliens, we do need to talk about the inclusion of the Pikes, which you and I did not catch right away.
No.
If, you guys, you need to go watch Matt's reaction video, because the moment he recognizes who the Pikes are is like one of the funniest things I've ever seen.
I wasn't expecting it. Like, I guess I don't know if we really saw much, because you and I realized at the exact same moment. I went back and watched
We did.
literally the exact same moment when it kind of close ups on one of their face coming out of the long speeder, the big train there, and it does. And I was so shocked because it doesn't look really much like what we're used to seeing. And now I have to correct myself, because in my reaction video I did say this is the first time we're seeing them live action. It's not. I was excited about this, but we did see them in the Solo movie as well, which totally flew right over my head when I watched that. That's a very different interpretation in that movie as well.
Oh, yeah.
They have like really big helmets. And I don't know if they mentioned the name at all. To be honest with you guys, I'm not a huge fan of the Solo movie. It's not for me, okay? If you like it, great, more power to you. But maybe I'll have to go back and watch it again. But yeah, that's one of the details I missed. So I'm not that surprised that you and I missed it here. It's just a different, their heads are much bigger in Clone Wars, and they have like more flowy robes, and it's more colorful, and they have those big eyes. They don't wear masks either, I don't think. So it's like
that's the thing. Weird. That's the thing that threw me off. Is somebody tweeted it like a day ago. They were like, the Pikes are probably the most inconsistent design in Clone Wars, or not in Clone Wars, just Star Wars in general, because in Clone Wars, it's like they have a mask that's merged with their actual face, which gives them those big heads. And, Clone Wars is very stylized. They only have 3 fingers. They've got interesting shape to them. And, and that a large part of that is due to the fact that animation is so flexible and you can do so much with it. And then you go to them in Solo and they just have like the masks, which don't really look super similar to Clone Wars. So it's easy to kind of miss that those would even be Pikes. But in this one, it's like they have masks and then they take them off and they have faces, which really threw me. And which, by the way, when they took the mask off, and I didn't say this, I realized that I think a lot of things during my reaction videos, but I don't say them, is they kind of looked like aliens from Star Trek more than Star Wars, I thought.
It's like I think it's probably both. Yeah. But they're hideous either way. They're not the most handsome looking aliens I've ever seen.
Which, honestly, I don't blame us for not recognizing them, because they do not look the same.
No, and I thought I was being stupid at first. I was like, oh, I'm such an idiot. But then I went back and watched it again. I'm like, no, it's not super clear that it's them. You don't really get a good look at them when they start firing on the Tuscans initially, which is what happened here. So I think it's forgivable, okay? And also, you have to remember here, I'm not criticizing the way they look. I think it's fine. And obviously, you brought up this point as well. When you're doing live action versus animation, there's way more you can do with animation. It's harder to have that translate to live action because of how you do the makeup, how people move around, how long it would take to do it. It's very similar to Rosario Dawson being Ahsoka in Mandalorian. A lot of people were criticizing her little funny hat thing.
For Leku.
Yeah. And it wasn't long enough, right? Because for her species, they would typically be longer. And in Clone Wars, it's longer than that. But like, they couldn't do that, obviously, because it wouldn't work in terms of her movement and, the way the makeup and prosthetics work. So I think it's the same thing here. and I think you just got to be creative with what you got. And I think they looked, and they ended up looking fine. It's just I didn't recognize them immediately. I think, in my opinion, they probably could have made like the eyes a little bit bigger. You know, maybe
Yeah.
the head's a little bit bigger. But yeah, I missed it. You missed it too, which makes me not feel as bad about it. But either way, I'm happy to see them in so early on in this season.
Me too. I'm honestly surprised with how many close tie-ins we're getting because, I'm a person who doesn't expect big payoffs right away. And so when they do give those little payoffs, I'm very pleasantly surprised by it. But it's really cool having the Pikes in the show and, having them affect the story in a prominent way. I immediately started laughing when he's like, what does spice look like? And then like the thing spills out and it's like all the spice. I'm like, oh, it's their turmeric and basil and Italian seasoning. I thought back to that conversation that we had during the first season of Bad Batch.
They're spice traders.
They're very protective of their legal spices.
As I would be too.
But
you gotta season that chicken somehow.
But that was really cool. But moving forward, we get a really good look at the Tuscan Raiders further into this episode, another alien, if you want to call them aliens, which I thought was really cool. And you actually said this in your reaction video, and I was thinking this too, is a lot of similarities to Dances with Wolves in this episode. Like Boba is Kevin Costner in Dances with Wolves in this episode, and that's really cool. Do you want to, like, what were your thoughts on that? Because you brought it up first.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it was on purpose. It seems to be, but it also seems to be kind of a common trope. You know, the outsider comes into some kind of tribe and gets initiated into the tribe. I can't think of any other examples off the top of my head, but they exist. And if you know what I'm talking about, go comment them in below. But yeah, I mean, you definitely see the same similarities here of like trying to communicate certain things to the Tuscans and not being able to speak the same language, having to use, sign language. Reminds me a lot of Kevin Costner when he's talking with the native tribe about like Tatanka, Tatanka, Tatanka.
Yeah.
Same energy there when they're all sitting in like their little huts. Very, very similar vibe. So I thought it was cool. I don't know if that was necessarily on purpose. It seems like maybe it's a little bit of like a nod to that because it is like Dances with Wolves is one of my favorite movies ever, as I'm sure it is for a lot of people. But I thought that was interesting, like those kind of tie-ins, because they still have a lot more of that Western feel in this show, which is what I've noticed as a similarity between Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett. Is Mandalorian has obviously all the Western tie-ins that we've talked about ad nauseum, but I think it's interesting how they're doing the same thing with Book of Boba Fett with like, it's like they're doing a train robbery kind of thing.
Yes.
With speeders instead of horses. You have Boba Fett coming in and mingling with the natives and learning their culture and getting initiated and doing, drugs with them or,
whatever that was.
Whatever that was. It's in like a desert, and he goes into Tashi Station, which is saloon for all intents and purposes, and beats up the bad guys there, and he's kind of the outsider who comes and fixes things as Boba Fett is. So yeah, just a lot of Western themes in general, but nice little nod to Dances with Wolves.
I did like that a lot. And which one's the first? He's getting like trained to fight with the staff by the female Tuscan, which I'm assuming is like the chief's wife, as far as I understand. That reminded me a lot of the Zorro movies. The training sequences in the Zorro movies.
Oh, right.
And I said this in my reaction video is like, for some reason in Star Wars, save for like, the original trilogy, we don't see a lot of actual training to become a Jedi between like a master and a Padawan. And I really, really wish, if I was to do one thing to change about like the sequel trilogy movies, is I would rather have like Rey go to the island and she's like, I will leave you alone if you train me. And Luke's like, fine, I'll train you if you leave me alone. And I've always wanted to see that kind of sequence, like in the Zorro movies, applied to like Star Wars, to have like a badass training sequence like that. And when I saw that scene with like Boba and the Tuscan, I was thinking, we rarely see scenes of training. And I personally love them. They're like I don't know, like they make me like so excited because you're like, oh my gosh, you're seeing the person like form into the person they want to be
more too, and understand where they're coming from, and then it helps make it like the fight scenes are more impactful because you've seen their journey to get there. Now, to be fair, we have seen some training scenes like in Last Jedi, you see her training a little bit with the lightsaber next to the rock and all that stuff.
But it's not like a
With
mentor to
Luke,
mentee thing.
not really. No, Luke's kind of like a
Loser.
old loser, divorced dad or something. And with Rey, you do get to see her training a little bit in the Rise of Skywalker with Leia's little obstacle course thing. But I agree, like maybe a little bit longer, maybe a little bit more one-on-one time would definitely be cooler, and we do get that here, which is interesting and nice. My joke was, well, now Boba can fight with a lightsaber because he knows how to twist a stick around,
Yeah, it would be kind of cool.
Essentially, all Rey's training was.
So I love that sequence because it's like, he's not like this perfect all-around badass guy. Like he can still learn stuff, and I'm just so appreciative of that. So I really like that a lot. We're jumping around this episode a lot, but this is our show, guys. So get used to it. What else? Oh, well, cool little tie-in really quick. The two people in the saloon scene, those are Luke's friends from a deleted scene in A New Hope, which is they're Cammy and Fixer, I think are their names. And I thought that was awesome. I don't know if we're ever going to see them again, but that was kind of like a cool little nod to what wasn't.
Very, very cool. I thought that was like I didn't know that until afterwards either. The other thing that was interesting is that area they are in, that is Tashi Station, which a lot of people will remember from A New Hope. That has one of my favorite lines in the whole trilogy where Luke's like, but I wanted to go to Tashi Station to pick up some power converters. That's Tashi Station. So I'm stoked we get to see Tashi Station.
I didn't know that was Tashi Station.
Yeah, that's Tashi Station.
Which, speaking of Tashi Station, Boba tells the leader of the Tuscans, he's like, hey, I'm going to go with this gun and I'm gonna go like destroy the train, right? And the chief's like, sounds weird, but okay. And so Boba leaves and he goes to the saloon and he like wants to like take the bikes, obviously. But on my first watch, I watched it. I was like, so he just went into this bar and killed all these guys for no reason.
Yeah, I was like, I was a little confused by that too. I'm like, wait, so he didn't have a plan? Because he's like, I'll go get the train. I thought he was gonna go find the train or something. But no, he just goes to a random saloon and was like, I'm gonna go beat up a bunch of guys and take their stuff. Like, I don't understand that really either. That was a little weird, but it was a cool scene.
It was a great scene, and they had like a Indiana Jones reference there, which was awesome with the shadow up against the wall, which was really cool.
Yeah.
But he comes back, and I was like, I don't get what your plan was here. You just went and killed a bunch of guys for no reason.
Yeah, those biker bar guys. Which
those are also an alien species from Clone Wars, I think.
Yeah, I know, and I don't remember their names. I couldn't think of it, and I was searching for it, and I couldn't find them.
But I thought that was great, and I really appreciated that. God, my nose is clogged today. I don't know why. I feel like it's allergies or something. The dry air in this room or something. But
oh no.
Before we get to listener questions, because we do have a couple listener questions today, let's talk about Boba's LSD trip.
Yes, let's.
What do you think? Because I think after watching it twice, I think it's a really simple explanation. I honestly think that whole vision is Boba trying to break free of the shadow of his father, Jango Fett, and the shadow of being a bounty hunter and trying to form into a new person.
Yeah, I think that's
put simply.
Yeah, I kind of said what I was thinking in my reaction video, which is pretty much that, which was like, oh, he's breaking free of who he used to be, and this is kind of a rebirth for him as a new, person. He's not a bounty hunter. He's more individualistic now, and that's kind of, I think, what his inspiration is to, go find himself in the desert after this, and then ultimately go take over, and shoot Bib Fortuna. And kind of start as like the leader of things. So I thought it was like kind of a rebirth, letting go of his past, letting go of, because you see the visions in there of him as Boba Fett and the Sarlacc pit, and his youth on Camino and, watching his dad fly around in Slave One and all that stuff. So yeah, I agree with you. I think it's pretty simple, very interesting sequence. Super. And then like the Jawas were in there too. I don't know. It was kind of hard. I'm pretty sure I'm going with my gut on this, which is less like he kind of starting a new chapter in this book of Boba Fett.
Yes, well summarized. The other thing that I kind of noticed too is in this show. So if you compare this show to The Mandalorian in terms of like character arcs and development so far, We always see Din in The Mandalorian with his helmet on. It's extremely rare for us to see him with his helmet off, but whenever his helmet is off in The Mandalorian, it's at an integral moment for his character, like, risking everything to save Grogu, or at a moment where he thinks he's going to die. And it's always out on those prominent character moments where we see his face. We've only had 2 episodes of Book of Boba Fett, but we see Boba more without his armor on than we do with his armor on. So we see his face more than we see him like with the armor on. And I kind of think that's like symbolism for him trying to break free of how he's been known up until this point, trying to form himself into like a new man.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting point for sure. And there's definitely a transformation going on here with this new group of Tuscans, which, by the way, we haven't talked about this yet, but
yeah,
definitely different from the other Tuscans. You can kind of see my metamorphosis of thinking while I'm watching this episode.
Right.
Because people are like, oh, they're trying to make us feel bad for Tuscans. I generally don't like the Tuscans because I grew up with them being the bad guys. You know what I mean? They beat up Luke and they killed Shmi Skywalker. So it's like, okay, we don't really like them. But this one seems a little bit different. They seem like they don't subscribe to what all the other Tuscans do. They wear different robes. They need help adapting, in the Dune Sea. And it's also part of, their metamorphosis to kind of learning is also part of Boba's learning with them.
Yeah.
And transforming and being initiated with them. And he gets to put on his black robes. He's not wearing the tan stuff anymore, even though I liked it. I like tan Boba. I'm a big tan Boba guy. But we've transformed to black Boba now, like black robe Boba, which is cool. And that scene where he kind of comes out of the tent, he's wearing his robes and he looks like a badass.
Yeah.
It was awesome. And then he gets to form his like staff and stuff. So I thought that was really cool. It's a nice little callback to when we first see him in Mandalorian, which was amazing.
It's just perfect how they tie up that story and make all these little like connectivity issues. And they're really trying to in what I feel is them trying to separate Boba from the armor, which is kind of funny given the fact that all of Boba's fan hype has been because he's just been this badass looking guy in armor. And I feel like Jon Favreau is trying to go, wait a minute, there's a person underneath that. Yeah. And guess what? If you hit him, he's going to bleed and fall like every other human. Which I think is just so cool.
Yeah, I mean, that's what makes Vader interesting, right? Is like there was a person under there. And I remember being a kid and watching it, and like I had a tough time. You have a tough time visualizing it when you're first watching A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. And you're like, oh, there's a guy under there. And you're like, oh, he's more machine than man, is what Obi-Wan says. And you're like, oh, crazy. And then he finally takes off the mask, and you're like, oh, it's such a big moment in Return of the Jedi. And you're like, oh, there's a guy under there. And that to me is what made the prequel so interesting, is now you explore who that guy was and how he got to that point. And that's what we're kind of doing now, but in a little bit of a different way, and more of an epilogue type of way of like, who is he? Actually, it's kind of both, because it goes back. It's going to go back and forth, and they might go back even further in Boba's past. I don't know. I still think they might. But yeah, I totally agree. I think, developing that character is going to make him infinitely more interesting when you go back retroactively and watch the movies.
They're adding more value to what comes before. And I just appreciate that so much from a storytelling narrative. And, speaking of that, it's just like, I just appreciate what this show is doing to tell a good story, because, they will have payoffs in this show, but the payoffs are going to mean even more because they're taking their time to like let you know where this guy is at emotionally and what's going on in the world around him and how he relates to the world around him. And that includes the Tuscans. So it's really cool. Any other talking points before we hit the questions?
Should we do theories now, or should we do them after questions?
Let's do them after questions.
Okay. Yeah, let's jump into questions then.
Okay. So we have just a few for today. I think we got a couple on Twitter, a couple on Instagram. So let me pull those up. Okay. This is a really good question. It is from Skid Space on Twitter. And Skid Space asks, how long do you think Boba was with the Tuscan tribe? It was apparently long enough to pick up on the basics of their sign language, but besides the quantified of a while, I can't seem to come up with an answer myself.
That is a good question. I actually mentioned this in my reaction video as well. I'm like, how long has he been there? Because he's learned a lot. I would say a couple weeks. I don't think it's going to take that long to train with, the staff. What's it called? The Riki?
It's not like a graffiti stick.
Yeah, graffiti stick.
Graffiti stick.
Yeah. But I don't think it would take that long to do that. I think it's probably a couple weeks, maybe a month is what I would guess. It could be longer, but you can see him kind of slowly healing, and it doesn't look like his face is like healed a ton. So I would assume it's probably only a couple weeks. What do you think?
In the show, definitely a couple weeks. From that starting period to the Mandalorian, it looks like he just stayed with them for like 5 years. Because if you think about it, when he's in the Sarlacc pit, that is 5 years before the Mandalorian, because that takes place around the timeline of Return of the Jedi. And in the Mandalorian, he's still wearing the black robes, and we first see Boba on Tatooine. So my assumption is that he just never left. Like he just got integrated into that culture for 5 years. And then when he sees that like Cobb Vanth stole his armor and then the Mandalorian came, that's when he got off the planet.
Oh, gotcha. So you're talking about how long in between, getting out of Sarlacc pit and Mandalorian. I was more talking about like how long has he been with them so far?
No. I mean both. I mean both. So like so far in the show.
I totally agree with you. I think, because now that we've, at the end of episode 2, we've seen him with his graphy stick and his robes, just like we've seen him in, that's where we first see him in Mandalorian. So I agree. He's probably like a desert wanderer from that time. And we might find out more in the next episode, but they might also close that little chapter and go back to another kind of flashback now. Maybe a Camino one, or maybe, bounty hunting days with Bosk, or, Cad Bane even type of stuff. But yeah, I mean, he must be with them, because we haven't seen him, right? He hasn't really popped his head up. He didn't have his armor. No one's going to know who he is, really. And when we see him in Mando, he looks the exact same. It looks like he's just been wandering the desert. So there's probably more to tell with that story, but I agree with you. He probably did chill with these Tuscans for quite a while before we see him in Mando.
I think a lot of that would have to do with his metaphorical rebirth of who he is. It's like maybe he just ditched the bounty hunting thing for 5 years and was trying to find himself or whatnot. And then, the timelines correlate so perfectly. He finds Fennec. He sees Din with Cobb Vanth in the Mandalorian. And then he's like, okay, complete reset. I'm going to take control of this armor and I'm going to kill Bib Fortuna and rule with respect, which is where we find him now. But that's a really good question from Skid Space. The timelines in these Star Wars shows have been getting really wonky lately, and it's easy to confuse them and where characters are at. So that's a fantastic question.
Someone also mentioned, and this might come up in the questions later, but or maybe with your theories, but I saw someone theorize about one of the Tuscan chief, how he might have some Clone War era armor on. If you zoom up in some of the shots, you can kind of see.
Really?
Yeah, Clone War era type of armor here. Now you have to remember the Tuscans are scavengers, so it could be nothing. Could have just picked it up from there, but it also could be some of the armor worn by the Jedi Masters during the Clone War era as well. So I guess my point with that is like, could we also be seeing some people from either Clone Wars or other Star Wars media pop up here somewhere as someone who is maybe disguised as a Tuscan or something? I don't know. But that also kind of plays into like the wonky timeline thing of like, it kind of messes with your head of like, when did this happen? Now, when would this happen? When would this have happened? Like I saw someone say like, oh, what if it's Rex? I'm like, there's no way that's Rex. That wouldn't make any sense. But also he'd be so old by then, you know? So it's like, it's easy to get it screwed up in your head because like you want to have these certain theories of what works and what doesn't. And I've been guilty of it too. Like I think last episode, even when we talked, I was like, oh, maybe it's this, but I'm like, no, that wouldn't make any sense. And then even you were like, oh, what if it's this? Oh no, that wouldn't make sense because this is after that. And it's like, it's like I almost need like a board like that. I'm just constantly
a map,
like a map with like a timeline with like ticks on like what happened when, so I can keep my head straight.
Yeah, it gets really, really confusing. But I'm gonna have to go back and look at that Tuscan chief now because I did not catch that at all.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. It might be nothing.
But they're infamous for throwing things in like that to mess with the fans, to be like, oh, this connects really subtly, but only if you're a massive Clone Wars fan will you catch that. So
take a look. I mean, I'll see if I can pull up. Yeah, I mean, you can see it pretty clearly in a couple of these pictures.
Yeah, send it to me.
Yeah, I'll send it to you.
Okay, our next question is from Zukong24. Hello, Zukong24. And they say, could Black Croissantin, I'm just going to call this Wookiee Black Croissant.
Black croissant.
Black Croissant. Could Black Croissant show up in the other Star Wars shows, i.e., Obi-Wan? If so, which do you think he'll appear in? Okay, this is interesting. Black Croissant, which is how I'm going to refer to him from here on out, was in a comic with Obi-Wan where Obi-Wan just like destroyed him and like gave him a scar on his eye. And so a lot of people are theorizing that this character could show up in the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. What do you think?
I don't know enough about it, honestly, to comment, but it wouldn't surprise me. I feel like the Obi-Wan show is really going to be more, because it's going to be just essentially a long movie, in what I'm suspecting. So I feel like they'll focus a little bit more on flashbacks with Anakin, Padme, Luke, how he looks after him, maybe a couple side plot things that aren't that exciting, but I think it's going to be very fast-paced. There might be a reference to it here or there, and it definitely wouldn't surprise me if he showed up, but I also wouldn't be surprised at all if you don't see him at all. You know, this could be, I feel like this is more of a reference to Boba with his connection with him as a bounty hunter and whatnot than it would be with Obi-Wan.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do think that there will be an impending showdown in this show between Black Croissant and Obi-Wan. For sure. Or not Obi-Wan, excuse me. I mean Boba. Black Croissant and Boba.
For sure, we're going to see that 100%. We're going to see this evolution more with the turf wars between the Hutts and Boba, and I think Black Croissant's going to be a big part of that.
This is another one of our nicknames, guys. This is not going to go away. This is going to be like Crispy Boy Crosshair. But welcome to our show of nicknames. But yeah, I think
we love our nicknames.
We do love our nicknames. Yeah, I think Boba and Black Croissant are going to have a showdown, and it will be badass, and I'm so looking forward to it. But as far as the Obi-Wan show goes, that is up in the air. I wouldn't write it off completely, but as far as it goes in relation to the narrative, I wouldn't say yes.
Yeah, but I think you're probably right.
But that's a great question, Zukong24. Hidden Scribbles back next.
Oh, hi, Hidden Scribbles. It's been a minute.
It has been a minute. As for theories, I have a feeling that Bosk is going to show up at some point. After all, there are some incredible looking Trandoshan costumes already for the show, and they've already brought back one bounty hunter from Boba's past in Black Croissant.
Yes, Trandoshans, I agree with you totally. It was good to see. I think that was this episode where we saw them.
Mucking about.
Yeah. I definitely think. What is Bosk up to? See, I don't know. I'm not a big comic reader or Legends reader, so I don't know what he's been up to. Is he alive still? I mean, I would imagine he's probably alive still. But that would be really cool. I think we'll see him at some point. I would be really bummed if we didn't see him, or even like Gengar or something, you know. So I think we'll definitely see some of those people from his past, and maybe they'll kind of touch on that in these next episodes, either with another storyline jump, or maybe instead of hanging out in the desert with the Tuscans, maybe Boba's trying to find his armor again and goes on some kind of adventure and runs into some of them somewhere. I don't know.
Tamora Morrison was like, I'm so sick of being on a sandy planet. I think there was like an interview with him where he was like, do you know how tedious it is to shoot on a sandy planet? He's like, I just want to get off Tatooine.
I can imagine. I did hear people complaining about, they're like, oh, Star Wars is so creative. Can we find another planet but Tatooine? I'm like, dude, this is where the story happens. Like, yeah. You got to stick with it for some characters. You know, we've seen tons and tons of new planets in Star Wars. But Tatooine is the first planet we see in the movie. So it's like, it's a integral part of like what the story is. So unfortunately for Tamora Morrison, he's going to be shooting there for a while.
Cannot say I blame him though. Like, it's got to be tedious. You're like, oh my God, just get me off this god awful planet. Which, by the way, the longer this show goes on, the more valid Anakin and Luke are, because it's like, this planet looks horrible to live on. Tatooine looks like one of the worst places to live. Like, have you seen all the creatures they've thrown in?
Looks just miserable.
It's just the worst. Okay. Next question. Maggie.sylv.art says, interested to see how the past and present storylines will meet up. Yes.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's actually a very good point. I think we'll see some crossover with Mando at some point. And I think we'll see a lot more introduction of characters, and I think we'll see some intersection with Clone Wars, and Bad Batch as well.
Ooh, I forgot about Bad Batch until you said that just now.
Yes.
I would,
So let's see what happens. But I totally agree. I'm interested to see how they all intersect as well, and how they end the season as well. Like I'm interested to see what kind of note they leave it on.
you know, I think there are 7 episodes this season, and after the confirmation that Dave Filoni's directing episode 6, a lot of people are like, a lot of people are joking, Ahsoka's going to be in it. No.
Yeah, yeah, no, probably.
Probably, knowing how Dave is, but Dave is the connective tissue between animation to live action. He's like a huge part of the reason any of this works, because
Yeah,
he's just made all these connections. And so what a lot of people are saying, which I want to stay calm about, but a lot of people are being like, oh my God, are we going to get Bad Batch in episode 6? Are we going to get a reference to Bad Batch? But further to that, are we going to get a reference to Cad Bane and see how their showdown went?
yeah. It's that would be my inclination. So I was gonna say one or two things. After finding out Dave Filoni did it, and it's one of the last episodes, I would imagine it's either Bad Batch with Omega, because there was a lot of tie-ins with Boba, obviously, as we remember in Bad Batch, and that's going to come in at some point in this season. It has to. Otherwise, what's the point of going through all that storyline with Bad Batch? Or 2, it's going to be Cad Bane reference, which I think is extremely likely given Dave Filoni's background and history. Yeah, people were saying Ahsoka. That's funny, but that wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. I wouldn't think. I'd rather see Omega or Cad Bane. I think those would be 2 awesome, or both. So we could see, or maybe, yeah, I don't know. I'm just excited to see what he does, but I think it'll definitely be good fan service for that particular episode.
And it's one of the last 2 episodes. So I have a feeling the last 2 episodes are going to be a 2-parter to lead us into the finale. So I'm excited to see what they do, but I am really interested to see how the timelines correlate. So great question, Maggie. Hidden Scribble also adds, I love how much they're expanding on Tuscan culture and showing that not all of them are bad. It's also nice to see that Boba has found a family again through them. That's really interesting, because I even said this in my reaction video. I was like, Boba has never really had a family. Yes, he had his father, Django, but Django was constantly leaving him on Camino and then going off and doing these bounty hunting things. And then he would come back and get him. And then Boba watches his father get decapitated by Mace Windu. And so ever since that moment, and as we see in Clone Wars, he's been on his own, and he's kind of just been passed off from bounty hunter to bounty hunter, that Aura Singh, and then he does these jobs with Ventress and Bosk in the Clone Wars,
and he
kind
of
then
has a family with them almost, but it's not really, because they're all scumbags.
No, and so and this is a kid that goes to prison in Clone Wars at 13 years old, and so if you watch that in the context of Book of Boba Fett, you really feel bad for him, because you're oh my God, at the end of the day, he's just that kid who was scared and alone all of his childhood, and he just wanted that family. And so in this weird way, the Tuscans are becoming that kind of family, and he's belonging somewhere, which essentially is what Star Wars is about at the end of the day. It's about that found family.
I'm just going to say one thing to that, and that is, yep.
I nailed it.
Wasn't that funny? Reference to a meme. Ha, 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 ha.
What meme?
When Boba just says, yep.
Why do I not know what you're talking about? But I know what you're talking
kidding me,
about.
Little mini Boba on Camino?
Oh! When the door opens, he goes, "Yep, yeah, okay, yeah." Okay, I get it. Sorry, I didn't catch it right away. I'm tired. I'm tired.
No, that was a bad joke. That's my fault.
That was kind of a bad joke. I think I think those. It would have been funnier if it was Willem Dafoe's. I'm something of a bounty hunter myself.
No, I think you made all great points. Just the reference of who he was and where he's kind of come from, and now he has found kind of a family, Hidden Scribble. So I think that's a really good point of that's why it's a rebirth for him, is he realizes what his life can be and what he should do, and now he's trying to rule with respect instead of be some kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Some kind of
mercenary.
Well, yeah, or warlord who's going to decapitate people and rule with fear. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so that is interesting.
He's trying to do the right thing now. He's kind of turned a leaf, right? And right, even when he helps Mando, right? He's we're gonna help get the kid back or whatever.
That's actually a really good point too, because in Book of Boba, he doesn't kill the Gamorrean guards. He's like, hey, do you want to serve me? Things like that. And so I don't want to say it's a gentler Boba, but it's more he's found new purpose in how he approaches his life, which is really cool.
I'll be interested to see where he finds his ship as well.
Oh yeah.
As it's now called, Boba Fett's ship. It's not Slave One anymore. I'm gonna call it Slave One. Yeah, where did he get it? Because it's just in the Mandalorian. They found it, right? And
Yeah.
it's great. But like, where has that been? So I think that'll be part of the journey as well. Maybe we'll see that in the coming episodes here. But I think that'll be an interesting little piece of the story too.
That's a good point. I didn't even think about that. I wonder if they're going to intersect it with how, like he finds Fennec eventually too, going back to Maggie's question. So it'll be awesome to see how these storylines correlate. And I'm interested to see when Mando will be in this show, because I think it was confirmed, or maybe it was just rumored last year, that Pedro Pascal will be coming back for this series. So I'll be interested to see how they bring him back into that timeline.
Like, for sure, they're going to bring him back in, and they'll do some kind of reference to set up Mando season 3. I can almost guarantee that. Like, these guys know what they're doing. They're good storytellers. They're going to give us a little bit of something here, whether it's a full episode. That could also be something that happens in episode 6 with Filoni, where he, Boba Fett enlists the help of Mando to come help out with, maybe a war against the Hutts or whatever it is. I think we'll definitely see that, and maybe get some more story to set up what season 3 is going to look like for Din.
Din Djarin. Sounds like a sauce.
Yeah.
Can you pass the Djarin?
For Din.
Okay, our last question of the day is from Jib. And Jib says, in regards to like theories, Jib says other bounty hunters are going to try and fight Boba Fett for the Hutts, in parentheses, Bossk, Cad Bane. I do think that there will be some kind of turf war premise happening, just because of what we saw with the Hutts. Again, I don't know how they would bring Bossk in. I don't know if they're going to bring Cad Bane into like the modern timeline, but I think flashbacks could be really likely because of his showdown with Cad Bane. But as far as the turf wars thing go, I don't want to write anything off, but it's possible.
I think it's almost confirmed at this point, with you getting a little tease of the bounty hunters with Black Croissant, and with the Hutts, right? And so I think it's likely to see more of the bounty hunters kind of show up and be like, there's going to be other people who want that too. It's not just Boba. Although I don't know why they wouldn't have gone for it before, with Bib Fortuna being there. I guess now that they hear Boba's back, they're like, all right, well, what's the deal? I want that, So, I think seeing some turf war aspect is highly possible.
I think the showdown with Boba and Black Croissant is going to be so badass. I'm really looking forward to that, but I'm still plugging so hard for Cad Bane. Like, I just want it so bad.
I'm just gonna keep it out of my head and just hopefully it shows up, but try to not think about it too much.
Yeah. Those are all of our questions. So thank you so much, guys, for your questions. Keep them coming. We want to keep you guys involved in the show. It's a lot of fun for us, and sometimes you guys catch things that we totally miss. So thank you very much for all the questions.
Yeah, guys, thank you.
I think that's it, but I did have one more thought, and I guess this is where we can get into our theories. But something I noticed about this episode is Boba is consistently going back to the bacta tank to like heal himself, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things that crossed my mind during this episode is something more serious going on here?
Yeah,
or
I thought the same thing. Yeah.
Or has he just sustained really bad injuries from 5 years ago? Like, let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah, I think that's definitely indicative of something else. It's also a way for us to get these flashbacks, so I don't want to read into it too much. It's just a way, like, if he's in the bacta tank, it means he's like ruminating on his past, so we can kind of go back and look at these flashbacks. It's a storytelling device.
Mm-hmm.
But to your point, I did think the same thing as well. It's like, if he's in the bacta tank a lot, what's going? Like, that's one of the first shots we see, right, in the first episode, right? He's in the bacta tank. Is maybe it's not one of the first shots, but it's in that first episode where he's there, and you're like, why was he there? So maybe he had long lasting effects from Sarlacc pit, or maybe he has some other condition or something we don't know about, or maybe he's just easily injury prone now because of something. I don't know, but I agree with you. I thought the same thing. I'm like, he's been there a lot. Something's going on. Yeah,
and I don't know. Maybe it's just it could be a really simple explanation. It might not be as deep as that, but if there's anything I've learned from Star Wars, it's just like everything has a purpose. And so I don't want to brush it off on first glance, but I was like, either he's got some like extended head trauma or something, or maybe he really just does like the Polynesian spa. So
He does look a lot better than Mando season 2.
yeah, so maybe he's just freshening up. Maybe this is the equivalent of just like self-care every single day.
Maybe it has a lot of moisturizer in the back that gets into your pores and it heals your scars and makes you tanner and just adds a nice glow, you know?
Yeah. I think we could all learn something about self-care from Boba. But
For sure. He has a glow up from season 2 of Mando.
Yes. But as far as, the episode goes, I really, really, really liked the second episode. I thought it was a great jump off from the first episode. Just the special effects and how they're approaching the show. I'm so impressed with the story and I really feel immersed in the world. And that means a lot to me. And so I'm just interested to see what the direction is moving forward.
Likewise. I think very impressive. Had to be an expensive episode to make too. I'd give it like an 8.1. I thought it was very good. And stakes are high now. They've set expectations high, but I don't think they're going to, honestly, I think it's only going to get better. I think this will be one of the better episodes from the season, but I think there's going to be maybe 2 ones that we say are that much better. So we'll have to wait and see.
With that being said, you guys know where to find us, but in case you forgot, you can find us on Instagram and Twitter at @star_wars_pod or TikTok if that's your thing. Please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Every little bit helps, and we want your feedback and we want to keep improving the show. So please give us a review there. Spotify video. If you guys don't like hopping around our social media, go to Spotify where you can listen or watch our episodes now, which is very exciting.
And give us a review there too. 5
yes.
stars. There's reviews on Spotify now, and that would really help us out if you like the show. Please do leave us a review. Every little bit helps.
It does. And check out our memes. I've been working really hard on our memes lately. Give them a like and a retweet and a comment because we want you guys involved in the show. That is very important to us. Drop a comment. Let us know what you thought of the episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe and all that fun jazz. And we will see you next week with our reaction videos to episode 3 and our Bad Batch breakdown, Book of Boba breakdown for episode 3 next week.
Let's do it. And let's try to get over 1,000 subscribers in the next couple months here. I think we can do it. We're slowly making our way there. So tell your friends if you have people you think would like the show. Share them a link. And keep commenting. Keep engaging. We love talking with you guys. And we'll see you next time on another Star Wars podcast.
See you guys.
Bye.